Welcome back to Celebrity Radio. It's Alex Belfield talking to some of my favourite people and some of the most successful bands, groups and artists in the world. And one of the most popular and loved is Black Dyke Brass Band. They're back on tour through 2015. You can find out more by going to handshakegroup.com/Black Dyke Band, or just put in Google Black Dyke Band and you'll get all the dates there. April 2nd coming to Wakefield, August 29th in Scarborough, October 3rd they're in Scunthorpe. And the man who knows all about it is the Conductor. He's a musical genius. Nicholas Charles, how are you?
I'm very well. It's a very nice introduction too.
I really love what you do, and I just spent a couple of years in Yorkshire on Radio Leeds, and the backbone of Yorkshire is these brass bands, and we all fell in love with brass music after Brassed Off, and today it's as popular as ever.
I agree with you. You know, Black Dyke celebrates 160 years of great musical history. We're still practicing the same headquarters in Queensbury, nestled between Halifax and Bradford. But my musicians, you could say that they're amateur because they all have, teaching jobs or they're in sales. But, they're very much Olympian in standard. And the average person probably travels around about 200 miles to every band practice. And if I told you that we have at least 2 band practices a week and a concert that we look forward to presenting our music to as well. So it's a real passion when you hear the brass band rather than a job.
It's extraordinary. I mean, that people care so much, but they do. I mean, the one thing that Yorkshire people are known for is their passion and the fact that they'll get on and do it. And I suppose for your people, there's no chore in driving that far because they want to do it.
No, I agree with you. As I said, we do around about 50 concerts a year, and, it is extremely popular. And the youngsters seemingly coming right through as well because Black Dyke, we run the Yorkshire Youth Band, so we have youngsters that meet around about 120 of us, meet around about 10 times a year, and we find all the very best young players. They go off to the community bands, and even the best of all of those, of course, eventually come through and play with bands like the Black Dyke Band.
How competitive is it? If I wanted to join the band, is there an audition process? How do I get to join the group?
Well, I think that's like, how do you get to play in Carnegie Hall? It's practice and practice and practice. It is one of those ones, and we're fortunate that we have a scouting network where we can listen to the community bands, the younger players, and you do your competitions, and you hear these people coming through. When we do have a vacancy, then inevitably we already know who we want. And as I said, we don't mind whether it's 200 miles away, or ideally, if it was in Saddleworth, we'd be even more delighted.
How do you qualify to do your job as the conductor of the Black Dyke Band?
I know that's a nice question, but if I take you back a little bit, when I was 16, I was a British solo champion, and then at 18, I decided I wasn't going to enter any more competitions as such, and I was going to really develop my own playing career. I decided after playing for another 15 or so years that I really wanted to be in charge of a musical brand. And so I knew what I wanted to do personally, but I wanted to influence a group of players. And I guess that's what a conductor does, is try and make, instead of 30 individuals play, we get together and I make them sound like a band. It's difficult to describe because a conductor doesn't actually make any noise and the audience doesn't see his faces, and yet he's got to influence and make sure that the band makes him sound really good. It's a tricky one to explain, but if you were in my band, you would certainly know how I could bring you into to play a particular piece of music at a certain speed and in a certain style, and only in the way the Black Dyke can do it.
Once the song started, and I get that you have a job up until that point because we all need to come in at the same time, but once the song's started and everybody's playing along, are you more or less superfluous?
I think if you were playing something rhythmic like a march, then that has a pulse that goes right through it. But in a typical brass band concert or in a Black Dyke concert, you can almost look at the program like a journey. And so, yes, I might start off with a march, but then I might go into something that might be a hymn tune or a very special song. Of course, in a song, it isn't like a pop group where they just layer tracks down and it's all at a certain pulse. Yeah. It's all about emotion, and that emotion is what hopefully I can generate. And then, they might go slower or faster, and that emotion will come out within the music, and we all sound as if we're playing exactly at the same time. So in rhythmic music, yes, but I think in musicals, then the conductor can have a real, genuine influence.
I'm certainly not the first to say this, but I find your music incredibly moving, especially when the flugel starts doing those solos and things like that. I mean, there's something about a brass band that seems to take us to a better place. I don't know whether it goes back to the Hovis adverts and all of that stuff as a child for me, but it is incredibly moving.
It is, and I call that journey. But you know, when I normally say to people, you know, come to a concert and they say, well, I haven't heard a brass band for a long time, I always remind them, when you come to listen to Black Dyke, you know, probably the most famous of all pop groups was the Beatles. The Beatles only made one song where they were actually on side B. On side A, Black Dyke was there. They enjoyed them so much, they said, you know, come and join us on there. So every time you hear the Yellow Submarine and you hear that music in the middle, that's the Black Dyke Band.
Wow, that's fantastic. I didn't know that. What a great story. How many members stick with you for decades?
We're very lucky that you mentioned at the very start, you know, how do you join the band? Sometimes there are a number of players that are good enough to join. You have to pick the right ones that can fit into the ensemble. And so we go back 160 years, but my longest serving member of the band is Philip Goodwin. He's a tuba player, and this year he will be in the band for 30 years. And so it's if you pick the right ones, then they'll stick with you for a long time.
How tough is it keeping a band going? Because it does cost money to hire venues and to put concerts on and to rehearse and all that stuff. And of course, somebody's got to write the score and conduct the band, which is you. Is it a struggle to still keep these bands going, or is there such a demand for it that it sort of takes care of itself?
It's always a challenge. I think, you know, whether you're a symphony orchestra or a brass band, there are always challenges, and you've got to recreate yourself so many times. You know, for what people might imagine you would listen to in a brass band concert, it can be very different. In the olden days, you would listen to marches and waltzes. When you come to a concert now with Black Dyke, well, we've got everything from film music to, you know, music by Edward Elgar, his Pomp and Circumstance and Nimrod. But, you know, it's that journey that I'm sure it can be emotional, exciting, and certainly when you finish a Black Dyke concert, you'll come out with a smile on your face.
I think for me, one of my favourites is the Concerto do Angeles, which they did in brass stuff. It's a beautiful song, isn't it? It's
an absolute cracker. It's one that is requested many, many times. I say to people that it's one of the best films. It's funny, though, you know, being at Black Dyke, I can never remember the name of the band that was in that film.
That's funny, isn't it? It's a coincidence. I mean, it didn't do you any harm, that show, when it became a musical, when it became a film. I mean, it really did take off, and it gave a new life to the brass band.
It certainly did. And, you know, people think of another series that was recently on, and with Alan Tishmarsh, and it was called Ground Force. And every time you were listening to those, you know, him giving you all the tips about gardening, you started whistling those tunes. That's right. That's Black Dyke again. That's Black Dyke again. So it's we can take you on all of those journeys. It's a nice one.
Again, there's just something wonderful about it. I used to use your CD as backing tracks when I was on Capitol Gold because, again, there's something that moves the show forward at the same pace as the band. It's strange to explain, but it does give an energy to a show.
Yeah, it does. And, you know, and while we were talking about, you know, some nice stories, you know, recently the band played on A Night with Elton John. And he wanted to play one tune with the band, and he said he wanted to play the Wembley song. And I said, "Oh, you know, what is that?" He said, "Well, Abide with Me." And we did it on the show, and he calls the band the SAS of musicians because on the same show, the Spice Girls were playing, and they had a song that lasted about 3 minutes, and it took on the day just short of 3.5 hours to actually put down. The band went in and played Abide with Me, which lasts 4 minutes. It took us 8 minutes to actually record because we played it twice. And he said the SAS in musicians because they just go in and then go to the party after.
You see, again, I think it's that mentality that you do it live, don't you? And then you get to the pub. I mean, there's no covering up. Your concerts are fully live. There's no backing tracks. There's no covering. You are what you are.
That's right. You know, a typical concert will have a nice 50 minutes, a nice interval, and, you know, it's always building up to the huge climax at the end. And we're looking forward to all of these concerts that we've got coming up at the Theatre Royal on the 2nd of April, and then in the Spa on the 29th of August, and again, as you mentioned, in Bath Hall in Scunthorpe on the 3rd. And so, anybody out there, wanting to come to listen to a great brass band, the most successful brass band in history, then please come and listen to the Black Dyke Band.
Thank you so much for your time. Great to talk to you. Nicholas Charles is the conductor and the man in charge of the Black Dyke Band. You can go and find all about them by going to Google and putting in the Black Dyke Brass Band. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.